So pop and power are terms that are typically used interchangeably in the past when discussing paddles and how they play. But we are now at a stage in pickleball where those two terms need to be defined separately so that you as a consumer can make more informed decisions on your next paddle, or just easier to compare between different paddles. Stay tuned to the end of the video where I give examples of paddles that have either pop or power or a combination of both. Consider using my codes or links in the description below to save yourself some money to help support the channel. All right, let's get into it. So John Q and Chris from the Pickleball Studio and myself have defined pop as the speed at which the ball comes off the paddle face when little to no extra force is added. So think blocks, resets, volleys, punch volleys, flicks, and imagine the speed at which the ball travels after contact with the paddle face. In comparison, power refers to the velocity the ball stays at while traveling through the air for an extended period of time. Think about how fast the ball is still flying through the air across the length of the court or a longer distance. Shots to help you better visualize this are serves, returns, drives, swing volleys, roll volleys, and overheads. Now, before I go into my picks, hit that like button, sub if you haven't already, and comment what category you think your paddle falls into. Pop, power, or both? Okay, so some examples of paddles that I believe have good pop but are fairly low powered are, well, they're kind of far and few if I'm being honest. Also, keep in mind that I'm categorizing these paddles as such in relation to each other. All right, back to paddles I would choose for high pop but low power. The first ones that come to mind are Zane's signature Pro XR 14mm paddle, the Pro Kenix Black Ace, the Yola Hyperion 14mm, the Pro Drive Ghost, 6-0 Double Black Diamond 14, the Vatic Flash 14, and maybe the Vatic V7 Pro. Now, I know some of the paddles that I listed there also have pretty decent power as well, but like I said, this is just kind of in comparison with all the other paddles that I consider its peers. So let's take, for example, the Vatic V7 Pro. So technically, this paddle could probably go in both the pop and power category, but if you compare it to the Vatic Prism V7 Pro, that paddle, the Prism, has more power and less pop in my opinion. Now, moving on to some examples of paddles that I believe have good power but low in the pop category are pretty much the EVA foam paddles that are not USAPA approved for tournament play, such as the Diadem Vice, the Ronbus EV1, and the HuDef Futura. Other paddles in this category I think are the Selkirk 006, the Proline Energy from Pickleball Apes, the Ronbus Nova, the Ronbus Pulsar, Bread and Butter Filth, and maybe the Carbon 3X. I'd probably put the Alchemy 13.5 in that category as well, the Vatic V7 Prism, the Scorpius 16, and Yola's Perseus 16mm as well. Some examples of paddles that I believe have both power and pop though are Pro Drive's Carbon, the Selkirk Power Air, Selkirk Project Labs 002, the Carbon X 16mm, and the Carbon X 14mm. I would probably say the Volair Forza. Now, I just want to reiterate that these are my opinions and personal experience hitting with these paddles stock as they come out of the box. You could add weight to these paddles to get additional power, and you could easily argue some of these paddles to go in one category or another. Hey guys, editor Will here, and as I was editing this video, there was some additions that I wanted to add to this chart and some info that I wanted to share with you guys. So firstly, there was some new paddles that came out that I didn't include in my list at the recording of the video when I first recorded it, so I'm just throwing them in there. First, let's toss in the Gearbox Pro paddles. Both of these I would probably put in the high power and high pop category, with the control version having just a little bit less of both and leaning more left and downward if you were to kind of follow this chart. Next up, the Lux Control Air I think would definitely be in the less pop, less power category, along with Cliff's new Varus paddle as well. And the last paddle I kind of wanted to throw in there was the Engage Pursuit Pro 6.0, which I would toss in the high power, probably high pop, you know, moderate pop category. It's kind of, honestly, it's kind of tough to say sometimes. The thing is that your experience with a paddle will affect your perception. For instance, like some people will find that if it sounds loud or feels very stiff when you strike a ball, then they'll think that it hits very hard. But sometimes though, the reality is that that paddle does not have enough court penetration. Some of you watching this video will wonder, how can a paddle have high pop, less power, or vice versa? Or how can it have one but not the other? Most of that has to do with I would say the balance and the swing weight. So for example, if you took two identical paddles, they have the same, you know, touch and pop and feel. Now, one of those paddles, you add additional weight to the 12 o'clock or to the top of the paddle to heavily change the swing weight so that it's more head heavy. The one that you put weight on will now be more powerful because it requires more force to move more mass through the air. So you're basically transferring all that force to the ball with that additional weight on the paddle, but it technically won't be more poppy. It has the same, you know, core, same softness, same touch. So that's how a paddle can kind of have low pop but high power. And that's what makes reviewing some of these paddles and talking about pop and power a little difficult. Now, this chart here that I'm showing you is not completely ranking accurate, right? So like if you go to the upper right, that's not like the paddle with the highest pop and highest power necessarily. I just categorize them into 4 different buckets for you so you have a better idea of what I'm thinking when I'm playing or explaining these paddles to you. Now, with that being said, I do have a kind of scatter plot graph in my mind of where many of these paddles kind of fit in relation to each other. So if you kind of want to see a more accurate representation of this graph with a lot of the paddles that I have hit with, just let me know down in the comments below. I have been thinking about making a video to kind of showcase where all these paddles kind of fall into. And I don't know, I might add this graph into my future video reviews just to give you guys a better idea. So if that's something that you would like, just let me know. Anyhow, I hope you found this informative. Till next time, play better. I'm out.